Hey everyone, it's Brennan. Welcome to my channel and welcome to another video. Today we are wrapping up all the books that I read in January. My goal was 8 books in January. I ended up reading 9. Were they the books that were on my January TBR? Not necessarily, but nonetheless, it was a great reading month for me and a great way to start out the new year. So we will go in chronological order for the most part, but last month I read from like 3 different series, so when I mention the first book I read in that series, I'll just go on and finish the rest of them. Okay, without further ado, let's get into these books. The first book I read in 2021 was The One by John Mars. This is I guess I would call it a thriller, kind of like a suspense with a little bit of a sci-fi element. So the basis is there has been this genetic testing that's been developed that matches you with the one, your soulmate, that you were just supposed to be matched with forever. So this new technology has like broken up marriages, but I mean it's also brought people together. People who thought they were heterosexual are matched with people of the same sex. So you follow a lot of interesting storylines, and I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars and I read it super fast. It's a decently long book, but the chapters are so short, like 2 or 3 pages, but there's like 100 chapters. I think there's going to be a Netflix adaptation of this book that comes out later this year. This book had so many different plot twists and I really enjoyed reading it. Okay, I guess we'll talk about Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. Even though I can't say much about it, this is the 4th and newest book in his Stormlight archive, which is, I will link my video below where I talk about it a little more in depth. But this is a high fantasy and adult fantasy series, and you're in this world where there's been a never-ending cycle of these cataclysmic desolations where society basically ends. They lose all their progress that they've made since the last desolation, and you have Stormlight, which is infused into gemstones by passing storms. That is like their monetary system, but it also fuels the magic. But the magic in this world was thought to be extinct, I guess you would say, because they thought these desolations were over with. But then we start to have people come into some powers, and we know that another one of these events is coming. There are godlike beings in this world. There are different species of intelligent beings in this world. I mean, it's on another planet. Like, this is on another planet, but there are humans, and that's what I'll say. This book was great. I gave this 5 stars. I've given all the books in the Stormlight archive 5 stars, and Kaladin's story in this was so good. This book was painful. Oh, I'll insert a clip. I took a clip of me when I read one of the chapters. I don't think I cried in this, but I just felt emotions the whole time I was reading it. The next book I finished in January was The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. This is the Sugar and Spice book club pick from last month, and their live show will be on February the 6th, this coming Saturday at 8 p.m. I will link Amanda from Ginger Snapped Reads and Kirsten from Kirsten's Corner and Caroline Johnson, her channel, below too, because she's like the guest star, I'll call her, on this book club wrap up for January. And I should say it's a romance book club. Sugar and spice, sweet romance, spicy romance. We love it. So in The Simple Wild, we follow our main character, Kala. She has grown up in Toronto, but she was born in Alaska, and then her parents kind of split up, and she's grown up basically without knowing her dad. And she gets a phone call saying that her dad is sick. Please fly to Alaska and spend some time with him. So she decides to do it. She is recently laid off her job, quite convenient, and she goes to Alaska just kind of planning on visiting for a week. She doesn't really have high hopes with reconnecting with her dad, but she goes anyway. And her dad owns this charter plane company of like small planes in Alaska, like bush pilots. And she meets one of these pilots named Jonah. And in the beginning of this story, he's very grumpy. He has gotten very close to Kala's dad, so he kind of harbors like hard feelings against her for being absent from his life. But also, her dad was absent from her life too and let her down a lot in her childhood. You will learn about these things in this book. I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. This is actually the first book in a little series. I will go ahead and talk about the second book in that series, Wild at Heart. I read this on Kindle. I went to Barnes & Noble to buy this book because the cover is gorgeous. The bright red of the trees against the snowy mountains. This book is gorgeous. But I have it on Kindle because that was the quickest way that I could consume it. And I thought this was a really good continuation. I gave this 4 stars also. And we follow Calla as she and Jonah kind of decide where to take their relationship. Obviously they get together in the first book. So Calla's mom left Alaska because she like couldn't do it. She needed more of like the city feel. And now we're like, well, what's Calla going to do? So she and Jonah go on kind of a little domestic adventure together, and we just watch them as they plant roots and decide what they want to do with their lives. Really enjoyed this. We get some new characters in this book, and Roy, if you've read this book, Roy, he's such a good character. I mean, he ends up being a pretty important character in this book. Highly enjoyed it. Love the atmosphere of these books. There's a novella in the series too, so once I read it, I'll do like a bigger video wrapping the series up. The next series I have to talk about. Oh, I really like the Throne of Glass series. I might like this series even more, and this is like a Kindle Unlimited series. And this is the Zodiac Academy by Caroline Peckham and Suzanne Valenti. So I read the first book in this series last year, and it didn't like wow me or anything. I enjoyed it, but I was not like new fave level enjoyment. This second book though, Ruthless Fae, in this series, oh my gosh, I could not put this down. I gave this 5 stars. And this series is like if you combined Sarah J. Maas and Penelope Douglas into a series and it's set at an academy. It's so good. It's so good. So this is a bully romance though, and if you are not into bully romances, you probably won't like this. In the first book in the series, we follow our twins. They're Gemini, and their names are Tori and Darcy, and they've been living in our world, like in Chicago, growing up, foster home to foster home. And then they get told that they are actually the princesses to this Fae world, and they get taken there, and in this world you have elemental abilities, and they're typically based on your zodiac sign. So I think Gemini is an air sign, so they obviously have the power to control air, but you have other powers also. And this series, I like don't know what to say about it, because I pick up these books and I cannot put them down. They are so good. The angst that develops between the characters is just delicious. It's so good. I should say, so they're like enemies but also lovers, are the heirs of this society. So their parents, the royalty, died, and these other people have kind of come to have power, and there's 4 of them, one for each element, and so they are like enemies, but also they are insanely attracted to each other, and it's just, I cannot control the level of my voice right now, obviously, while I'm talking about this, because it's so good. Okay, don't judge me though if you've read it and you hate it, but I love it. And then going off that, I read the 3rd book in the series, which is The Reckoning. So in Ruthless Fae, Darcy and Tori are kind of trying to get back at the heirs for what they did to them in the first book. And then The Reckoning is the basically like end of their first chunk of time at the academy, their trial to make sure that they can continue on at this prestigious academy for Zodiac Fae students. And I should say there's different orders that you can be. So like there are vampires, there are Pegasus, there are werewolves, there are Medusas. This world has so much in it, and my expectations for this series are just have been blown out of the water. And the next series I have to talk about, I finished The Girl in the Tower by Catherine Arden, and then I also finished The Winter of the Witch. So I will just kind of talk about the series a little bit. Another series that I'm going to make a more dedicated video to. But I finished up Catherine Arden's Winter Night trilogy, and this one I did cry a little bit in. I have so much trouble controlling the pitch of my voice when I am passionate. Is that what I am? About these books. I obviously had a very good reading month. So Vasya is our main character in this series, and if she is not my new favorite female character, book character I've ever read about. So in the series, she starts out, she's not even born yet. And then in the first book, she grows up. She goes from, we start following her when she's about 6 or so, and then by the end of the first book, I found out she's about 17. And then The Girl in the Tower, she travels from her little home in the northern Russian woods to Moscow. I should say this is a Russian-inspired historical fantasy. It's based on actual events from 14th century Russia, I believe. So the struggle or the plot in this series is based on charity, or these Russian folk spirits, and some of them protect homes and then some kind of have more malicious intents. And this world, this sprite, spiritual, foresty, traditional world is now kind of butting heads a little bit with the Christianization of Russia in this time period, but it's not truly the religion that they're butting heads with, but more like the complete shunning of traditional folklore and men's coming to power and desiring control and wealth and just power for themselves. And Vasya is kind of our mix between the worlds. She can see these spirits, which makes the church and the more religious people think that she is a witch. But Vasya's family just wants to support her so much, and they just want her to live a safe and normal life, but Vasya knows that that is not the life for her. That's not what she wants. And this series just follows her as she finds her path in life and also helps society kind of combine these two worlds that they have, and it's so very good. I listened to all these books on audio, but I really want to have the series to reread. I will say I enjoyed listening to the audio because, well, the narrator is fantastic, and there's a lot of Russian terms and a lot of Russian names, so I enjoyed hearing those said, but I would definitely love to give this a reread physically. With fantasy and with fiction, I just prefer to read them. This is a physical book. In their physical forms. Read with my eyes, mainly. I just got these for a good deal on Audible, and I'm so glad that I have read this series now. Would totally recommend it. I gave all the books in this 5 stars. So good. Be watching out for a video with more details. And the last book that I kind of snuck in to my January reading was The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn. So I've been wanting something a little spookier or like scary. Like honestly, I think I'm craving like a horror book. So I picked this up because I know Kayla from Books and Lala really liked it. And this is like a short story basically. It's 64 pages. In the author's note at the end, Gillian Flynn says, George R.R. Martin asked me to write him a story. So this is her story to George R.R. Martin. It's definitely weird, and I don't know if it's like a defense mechanism that I have, but with the horror books that I've read so far, it's like I almost go into them with a satirical mindset, like I'm not ready to take them seriously, and I read them like they're, I don't want to say a joke, but I read them with a lot of humor over them, and I don't think this was supposed to be read like that. So I'm saying I didn't get scared, and I don't want to say I didn't take this fictional book seriously. I gave it 4 stars. It's like 3 stars. Also, you know, it's so short. Like I read it in an hour or less, and it just has, you know, the ending is so like up for interpretation, and I really enjoyed that. I will say what made me decide to give it 4 stars instead of like a 3-star is that I loved the characters, especially so our main character, seeing her outlook on things was fantastic. I really liked that. So I liked the characters more than I liked the plot, I guess I will say. So this was weird, definitely weird, super short, but did I love it? No. And I'm still wanting to read something a little scarier. I have so many horror books that I've bought recently that I could dive into, but that was the last book I read on January 31st. So, thank you all for watching. All the books I read in January, I gave 4 or 5 stars. Obviously a very good reading month. Let me know some of the books that you read in January. What were your favorite books last month? Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next one.